Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Renaissance Center chat. I'm your host, Dr. Carla J. Debnam, and I welcome you uh, on this program tonight. We thank you. We have a lot of information we want to share, so we want to get started. Make sure you put your questions in the chat. We will be discussing family matters from chaos to connection so that we can begin to resolve or at least try to understand what's going on in our families and just different situations we find ourselves in. So, especially as it relates, you hear a lot of different things. People are talking about family estrangement, disconnections. So, we want to see how we can resolve some of those if possible and go from chaos to connection. Our guests that are with us this evening are going to introduce themselves. We have Dr. Sharon and Minister Vanilla, so we will let them share their information and then we'll get started.
Hi, good evening. I'm Dr. Sharon Thomas Parker, and I've been a counselor at the Renaissance Center for a little over 10 years now. And I work a lot with families, individuals, and this is a very timely topic. So look forward to the conversation tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Minister Vanilla Jackson. I've been with the Renaissance Center on and off since the beginning, and my background is in criminal justice, but I love family matters.
Amen. Amen. So we thank and welcome you all and thank you for always being available for these timely topics. So we want to get started. And I want to start just generally. What are some of the issues and concerns that you see that families are facing? In the last few years, we've seen a lot of different things, but currently, what comes to your mind?
I think for me, Dr. Carla, I have been working with a number of families, and it typically, whenever there's a birth, a death, a divorce, separation, relationships, there seems to be some chaos that happens within our families.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate. And I think that a lot of it is centered around lack of communication, misunderstanding. And I think those are things that we really need to get down to the core of what's really happening in our families.
Mhm. I agree with you that death definitely is one,
Hmm.
and divorce is a big one,
Hmm.
and children being caught in the mist.
Yeah, yeah. That any time of transition, even from childhood to adulthood, in families, it causes some changes. But like you said, death, uh, divorce, births, any major life events, marriages, remarriages, um, moving across the country. So some of these different things that are happening in families, we don't communicate, or sometimes we find out through a third party or these days on social media that
Mhm.
things have happened and transpired in our families and amongst, our friends. So that's a part of it, that communication and how we communicate and how often. And but that is a big deal, the communication issue. So why do you all think some family members, since that is a big topic, family estrangement, have stopped talking with one another, or we've just lost touch? So some people will say, well, I lost touch with my great aunt and I hadn't heard from her, but now I hear, like we said, it's a death or a sickness or something, and now we've reconnected with our families surrounding these issues. So, what are your thoughts about the estrangement and losing touch with one another?
I think a lot of it centers around, excuse me, a lot of it centers around communication, as we said, and financial. As people start to move up the ladder or sometimes down the ladder,
Mhm.
I think that creates sometimes a gap between families. And that's a big source. Hmm.
As you said, communication is definitely a key. And how much are we willing to communicate? We'd rather do it on social media. We can talk about whatever on social media, but when it comes to family, we kind of back off. And sometimes we find out more about our families on social media. So
Yeah.
communication is key.
Yeah, I would say that is something that we have to relearn. A lot of our dependency now has been with the devices or different other ways of communicating. So we stop doing the face to face, or some people's families are really good at doing family reunions and
Hmm.
celebrating milestones and celebrating the life of their loved one
Mhm.
as they pass on. And then there are other family members that, oh, well, we're not having a repast. We're not even having a memorial service.
Hmm.
We're just, we let you know they passed away, and that's it. So a lot of hurt feelings, again, via lack of communication, is happening in all kinds of families. And a
Hmm.
lot of times we don't know, I'll say this, that we've had a problem with our family members until something major happens, or we try to reach out to them to check on them and they are no longer responding. So sometimes we think we're cool. One person in the family thinks, hey, everything is going well. Me and my children are good. Me and my spouse, we're good. Me and the in laws or my cousins,
Mhm.
my extended family, we're all good. But then you find out you're good with them, but they're not good
Good with you.
with you. And I think that's the what we're seeing a lot in the culture. Some of the hurts of separation, and we don't necessarily always know why, and then sometimes we do know why. And once we do know, it's up to us whether we can repair the relationship or learn to live without it, because we want to ideally go from chaos to connection, but we know sometimes the connection piece may not be what we would like it to be. We're on that journey to a connection, but we may not be able to restore the connection like we thought we'd be able to do. So, what are some of the suggestions? And don't forget, everybody, you can put your questions in. We're talking about family matters, from chaos to connection. And I know this is something that, as we as therapists, we know and deal with a lot of families and their challenges. So don't be afraid to share, ask questions, share this program so that everyone viewing can get the help and support they need. So one area where communication and chaos comes into play sometimes is with co-parenting.
Hmm.
So what suggestions do you have, or what's your experience, the average co-parenting um, difficulties that people face, even though they think it's going to work out fine? But what are some of the hurdles that people have to face?
Well, I think it's even more so than co parenting. I have a couple cases where now people, young folks, are staying home much longer, into their 30s even. And I think that that sometimes creates a barrier between them and their parents. And then if they're in a relationship, they may try to bring that person into the household as well. And so that creates a whole nother level of chaos and estrangement. Even though they're all in the same house under the same roof, um, and people stop speaking to each other. I recently had that, and they're living there together. And what I always advise is that people come in to places like the Renaissance Center to get family therapy. You know, most people think it's only couples therapy, but family therapy is something that we can also do because sometimes everybody just needs to be heard. What's their side? What's your side? And try to work it through with them. And I've seen so many cases of that with young folks in their 20s. Maybe they finished college, but they're still home because it's not feasible financially for them to live out on their own. But that causes some entanglement there. Hmm.
I notice with the younger parents that are co-parenting, if they could stop being so angry with one another and
Hmm.
remember that the child or the children are the priority,
Hmm.
then we can move forward. If we set up rules in the beginning with this co-parenting, then we can follow those rules. And if something happens, then we can come back together. But I see it's a lot of anger and a lot of hurt, and the children are still in the mix. But if they could remember that the children are the um, priority, then they can come together, set up the rules. This is how we're going to do this. Even if it's court ordered, got to stick to the rules. And if something happens, we go back and try because the children are the ones that get caught in it. And so then you make them they have to decide which parent, right? So we don't want that. So I think it's mutual respect and the fact that they need to remember that the child is the priority for the children.
Yeah, that's a good point. The child is the priority. The marriage may not have survived, or the relationship may not have survived. But if we have children as a result, we owe it to them to work out our differences as adults. And some of this spills over into grandparenting
Hmm.
because if the
Mm,
parents split, then this can impact access to the children, the grandchildren, depending on um, how things flow in that co parenting situation. So we do have to consider even the extended families are impacted when these co parenting arrangements and agreements don't work out well because, again, they miss seeing their cousins, going to different family events, and really going between different holidays and birthdays, and those things, help, but also they miss out on a big portion of extended family time, and even attending worship services or other events because they only may do it with one parent but or family and not the other. So it's when we're looking at the impact of how co-parenting um, that isn't working well turns out, it's very challenging for the children. And again, that's where family counseling comes in. You can still do family counseling after being estranged or separated because you want to work out the agreement for the children. I know a lot of times people do mediation, but
Hmm.
sometimes they even ask you to do parenting classes when you have these co-parenting arrangements. So, for those of you who know persons that are in this situation or you've been in it, take the classes. Show your children you're interested in their well-being. The relationship may not have survived, but you're there for them. So that co-parenting comes up a lot in families. And I would say this, besides we did talk about co-parenting, divorce, separation, sickness is another uh, concern that comes up that in families that could split families. As far as who's going to take care of this one or that one, or We hear this a lot. One sibling ends up being the caregiver or of their aunt, whatever it could be,
Mhm.
whatever the family arrangement and dynamics is. So is that something that you hear a lot of about the role of caregiving and how that's working in some families?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of my mid-level, mid-range 40s, 50s, they come in with those kinds of issues. Mom is in a nursing home, dad had to go to assisted living. Who's going to watch them? It comes down to a lot of times financial. I had to put dad here, nobody's chipping in. I stopped speaking to whomever within the family because nobody will help. Mom is home on the weekends, but nobody comes to visit, maybe once a month. And so, again, it causes that chaos, exactly what we're talking about within the family. And so, instead of having a family meeting and a family conversation about, okay, how are we going to solve this? One person takes it on and then I think becomes a little bit disgruntled when no one else kind of pitches in or helps out. And so they kind of get stuck with that duty or responsibility and they feel as though they can't give it up. Yeah.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes they don't even ask,
Mhm.
right? They don't ask because
Right.
maybe these siblings won't help, but maybe some other cousins will, right?
Right.
So they don't ask, and so they
Mhm.
take it on themselves, and then they're burdened. It's like, well,
Mhm.
they're not helping. Well, you didn't ask,
Yeah.
right?
It all goes back to communication with families.
Hmm.
Yes.
The better we communicate, I know that's one thing I suggest a lot of times um, to clients, and they'll laugh. I need to have a family meeting. I said,
Mhm.
because this isn't just, your issue. If the whole family's impacted, if someone loses their job or the marriage, dissolves,
Hmm.
and now we have to figure out, somebody has to move in because
Mhm.
they had to sell the house or they lost their job, so we got to find a place for somebody. So these are things that are worthy of a conversation and not an assumption, because sometimes people assume, well, I have somewhere to go, but they've never had a conversation with their family members or the whole family. And so maybe one person in the household says, hey, yeah, dad, you can come move with us. And everybody else is like, we didn't sign up for that. And
Mhm.
here we go. Here comes the chaos. And chaos can last a long time,
Mhm.
because once people move in, or it's hard for them to relocate on their own. We'll call it that. So it's hard for them to relocate. So keep that in mind. So if you are, in that situation, what do you suggest to people? Because this does happen. There's no conversation. Things, happen. They quit a job, or they took on another job, or they invited family and friends to move in without a conversation. Once that's happened, I'll start with you, Vanilla, and then you, Sharon. What do you suggest? We know we need a family meeting, but a lot of people don't want to do that. What other solutions can these families take when things change but no conversation was had?
Vanilla, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. Fellowship. People love the fellowship, and so instead of saying we're having a family meeting at my house, let's have dinner, right? but we're going to have it at the restaurant. Well, what happens at the restaurant is we're having a family meeting, right? And so that gets everybody together, right? That's the first thing. And then I'm sure you're going to have some people who are just going to peter out anyway. But for those that are left, those are the ones you're going to, that's your support system. So they're the ones that you're going to rely on. And then it spreads out from there.
Yeah, and that's absolutely a good suggestion. But I think anytime there's money involved, some people will say, well, I don't have enough money to go to that restaurant. That's just a really expensive place, or that's a place that I would normally go to, and I'm not comfortable going there. So again, people will start to make excuses about getting together. So I always try to make it just very general. Let's go down to the local bookstore, at the Starbucks. Let's see what we can do about a park. And, depending on the time of year it is, of course. But because people will find an excuse not to go to the restaurant, not to be able to communicate, not to sit down, and then they will call and say, well, they had it at the most expensive restaurant. I couldn't afford to go. I have 5 kids, you know. So again, it becomes everybody else's issue. So it's important to get together, even if it's on the front porch, you know, in the backyard, somewhere to get together to be able to sort out things and have a conversation about what's next. I think too is that people are spread out. It used to be that, if you were from the Carolinas, the whole family was in the Carolinas. Now they're in New York, they're here in Maryland, they're all over the place. And they're not just sitting right there in the city or the county in which they all grew up. They moved around, they spread out. And so family isn't as compact and as they used to be. And so it's hard to get people together. Sometimes two siblings, one lives in Texas and one is in New York. And mom happens to be closer to the sibling who lives in New York. So therefore, it kind of falls but sometimes that when we take on things, we're ready for the long haul. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point. The dynamics, the geography, and sometimes things we don't talk about is that maybe this family member that needs support, people don't necessarily have everybody isn't in the same kind of relationship with them. So they may feel like, hey, you all grew up together, you all were BFFs, growing up, you're the best fit for that. Or I know some people split the duties, like when the states are far, like you stay with mom will stay with you for 6 months, then she'll stay with me for 6 months. If you get to that, if you can get to those kinds of agreements, which is where we want families to think about, have these discussions before you need the support. So even, you don't talk about, um, it's not, you don't wait. We should not wait until we have an emergency, but that's normal. That's human nature. We're going to wait till we have an emergency. But if we can be proactive and make arrangements and have these conversations before, mom declines, or before the children have to move back home, and you and your spouse is now in a, fussing about that, when they're not there, saying, why did you let him back in? And, well, that's my only son. It just goes back and forth with within the family dynamic. So one question from one of the viewers is, how do you help your child have a better relationship with their non-custodial parent when you don't get along with the parent? What's your take on that, Vanilla, and then Sharon? Oh, Vanelli had to unmute. Yep, sorry.
Being positive first with the child and letting the child know that you can love more than one person, can help them. Um, okay, so this is your custodial parent, but guess what? We're in a family together and we can love each other. And you just have to be positive. Now, talk about the other parent, talking about the parent that's here with us now, and we're going to work it out and just be positive and loving and supportive and letting them know that you understand that this person is different, right? But we can still love that person.
I would totally agree. Being positive is probably one of the best things. Just constantly being positive and not talking about the other parent. I think that's key. That is absolutely key. I think that so many things are said and done. Social media is, a big part of that. People posting negative things about the other parent, and the child is right in the middle of that. And so, again, I think reframing from doing any of that defaming of the other parent and the other side of the family. Because, when the parents got together, they had great intentions probably, but that negativity was definitely not a part of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Stay positive. If you have a disagreement, or don't leave the child out as much as possible. Even if the non-custodial parent, is a person that doesn't keep their word, and they were supposed to come pick them up from school or various things, or said they were coming by and don't. Um, just try to help manage the moment and not, blame the parent or the child. Just be an encouragement to the child, like, hey, maybe dad got caught up at work, or mom, is still at the hair salon or something, and let's just reach out, make sure they're okay. And then if this is a pattern where the non-custodial parent, disappoints, or, has issues, keeping their end of the relationship, then again, that's a family meeting with the other parent, saying, hey, it doesn't seem like what we've agreed upon is working out for you. Is it something else? Like, do you have a new job schedule? Like, just keep us, be mindful that, we're trying to help our child. And so really, and just may sound simple, it's being an adult in these situations. We have the children, and they're here now, and learning to communicate. You communicated long enough to get the children here. We're going to say that. So we need to communicate throughout the rest of their lives, because these children are going to be in our lives forever. So you're going to be co-parenting forever. As adults, you're going to have to show up at graduations, weddings, uh, dance recitals, and if they have children, you're going to be the grandparents and be in the same rooms. So these are things that, if you don't get along now, while the child is younger, you're not going to be able to always ignore the other parent. And so that's why it's best to be positive and encourage the children to want to be in relationship, and then have time limits. Maybe the child doesn't want to spend overnight. They just want to do a couple of hours. They want to go bowling. They want to be activity based in their interactions with the non-custodial parent. So, but these are things, again, you have to have a conversation, and that, if we could get everybody to the table, or over Zoom, right? If we can't, if we're in different parts of the country, so we can have that discussion so we can do its best. But also try to work on the relationship with the non-custodial parent so that you can be cordial. The children pick up on these things and they play you against one another. So, which, the kids are good at that. So keep that in mind. Now, what we talked about finances a little bit. I love that Dr. Sharon brought up finances. What role do finances play in some of the family disputes and disagreements?
I think personally, finances plays a huge part in disagreements, whether it's about a child, whether it's about the parents. If someone dies, for example, what becomes of the family home? Some people want to sell, some people want to keep it. Finances come into play all over again. And here comes the family chaos and confusion because one person says, well, we don't have enough to pay the taxes or the light bill to keep it going. And all the family possessions are in the home. And so people feel a certain kind of way. But I think being realistic about what people can and can't do. So even if a person has the money, they should not necessarily offer to take on that responsibility because at some point, if something happens to them, then what? So we have to think longevity, long term, not just for today. And I think a lot of things are just for today, even with salary. So mom may be making more than dad or vice versa, and buy the child all kinds of designer clothes, and the other parent can't afford to do that. So the child looks at them as, I like this parent more than that parent, because socially when they go out to school, go to events, they have everything that they need, so they think. But the money part can play a big part in the disruption of families, and I've seen it. And it's something that we definitely have to, parents and family members should definitely take into consideration. Let's talk about how we're going to divide the taxes up. If there's 10 kids, let's talk about 10 ways. How are we going to do that? What's going to happen with that? Are we going to keep the home? And if so, who's going to continue to pay the mortgage? Who can move into the house? So finances, once again. So one person goes and takes up refuge in mom's house after she passes away, and all of the other siblings feel a certain kind of way about it. Again, finances. So it's a lot of little details that need to be talked about before anything, even burial cost, funeral arrangements. People stop speaking to each other right at the funeral because, hey, I paid for everything. I came out and did that. And you paid nothing, but that should be a conversation, because then later in life they have feelings about what they put out. So finances is a big one. Wouldn't you agree, Vanilla?
Yes, and I was thinking about the children
Mm-hmm.
and the big layoffs that the parents just went through. Somebody needed to sit down and talk to the children, teach the children about what happened. Things can't go back the way that they were because drastic things have just happened in our family. So no, you can't get the designer things anymore. Doesn't mean that I love you less. I love you more. I just can't do it. But we don't talk to our children. We just do what we need to do, right? But we don't sit down and educate them. This was what we used to have to pay. This is what we used to have to do. We can't do that anymore. But we just don't do that. So children are just left out there to defend. Like, I don't know what's going on. I used to be able to get Jordans. Now I can't get Jordans. Yeah, but yeah, mom was just laid off. A whole lot of people were laid off. So, everybody's going through this, right? So we need to talk to our children. Communication is key. It's hard, but we can do it. And they need to know.
Yeah, the children do need to know, and we keep it on their level. You know, you don't have to pull out all your bills and, you know, scare them about it, but they need to know. But also, like Sharon said, some of these conversations happen at critical transitional periods. When people divorce, it's a conversation. When people graduate, marry, get a new job, when people pass away, it's the financial aspects of all of these come up, and it's like the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about, and but we hear a lot about it. Like you said, people stop talking to their cousins because they didn't like how the cousins treated their aunt. And, it's just it's various levels of family disruption. And what we're seeing now is again the estrangement where people cut total family members off, or full sections of families. Now, we do know that some of this is because of abuse and neglect and trauma experiences that people have had with their loved ones, at the hands of their loved ones and family members. So these are some things that can be a barrier to the communication and to reconnecting. But it's also about safety for some people, and this is what we're not telling you. If it's not safe for you to reconnect or with your family members and friends, then don't. But if it's possible, to make these connections as civil as possible so that you can get some things done. We hear a lot, you know, at funerals, people being, you can't come, you can't speak, or there's so many things that come up at these pivotal life transitions. So this is why we want to communicate to prevent as much chaos, and communication is also the key to maintaining the connection. So while we're in this situation, whether by choice or by force with some of our family dynamics, um, with that strained communication, what part do you think not, um, I would say, not having realistic expectations or not discussing these things that come up? There's so many different things that come up in families, but we know finances is one of the number one. But how can we help people bridge that gap, especially when it's things that we haven't talked about, but now we're here?
That's a pretty interesting question. Um, I think that with social media, I think that people tend to go online and air out disagreements, family issues, concerns, and sometimes they don't even say the whole thing. They just make a statement. And that statement can be misconstrued by many. And so people who are not even familiar with the situation start taking a different spin on what may have been posted. And so it's really hard. I think that we have to sometimes isolate and really work through the issues with counseling before we go posting and putting things out, having, those midnight conversations with this cousin or that cousin, because then that, you say, I'm telling you this, but don't tell anybody. Well, that's going to be told, and 5 minutes later, it'll be down the street and around the corner. So it's really important to kind of process things and work through it and look at it from different points of view. I think sometimes we only see it from our perspective. We don't see it from everybody else's perspective. So, yeah.
in addition to that, trying to reconnect with family members. We do a lot of assumptions. We do a lot of assuming. But like I said before, communication is key. And sometimes just sending a card to someone saying, hey, I was thinking about you. They might call or send you a card back or call and say, what's up? And then at that point, you can say, I saw something posted. I just want to check to see if you're okay. Right. So that opens the door. Right. Because you have assumed, I saw that statement. I wonder who they were talking about. Were they talking about whatever? Right. Just send a card. Hey, just checking on you. Right. And then they'll call you back or send the card back, and you can open that door of communication and find out what the real issue is. Right. What the real issue is, because there's always an issue behind the issue. Right. So I always like to send a card just to say, I'm thinking about you. And sometimes I'll text and say, send something from Pinterest or something, right? And then people will get back to you. Oh, I saw something. I just wondered, what was that about? Or did you know anything about that? Oh, okay. Well, I can get another spin, right? Right. Prayer is important too. I must put that out there. Yeah, prayer is important. Let's pray about this, because some things that people post can tear a family totally apart. And we don't want that. We talked about reconnecting. We want to reconnect, right? So it's like, pray about this. Let me pray about it, and we're gonna come together because we want to connect. We want to reconnect. I mean, that's what God put us here to be, a unified body, right? So we do whatever we can, to help reconnect our families, because you know we don't want somebody to die and say, "Oh my God, I could have called. I could have sent a card. I could have said something," right? So my thing is always just send a card, send a text, say, hey, let's just check.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes, we hear this a lot. Well, I'm tired of being the bigger person. And but it takes that sometimes, if they're on your heart, to reach out and again pray about it, find out if anybody else has heard from them, if they haven't connected with you, and sometimes just finding out if they're okay, is enough for us to again feel like, okay, good, I'm checking in on my family, maybe not directly, but I know at least they're talking to other ones. And so we do have a question from a viewer on Facebook about what we just said. People are in different states. The caregiver is the one that's in the state with the mom, but the one that's responsible is in another state. For the on the mom's paperwork. How do you bring this up without tempers flaring? What are your thoughts? How do you bring up, mom, we might need to switch some things around, or family members, what kind of schedule can we come up with without people feeling offended?
Communication. Communication. Just like we're here on Zoom, it's important to get all of those siblings together on a Zoom. I know some have health issues and other things are going on within their households, but I think once you see each other and you talk face to face, you can kind of come up with some type of arrangement. Sometimes what we think is best is not what everybody else thinks is best. So we only see it from our point of view, like, okay, mom's right here down the street. I can get to her. I can do this. I can be the power of attorney. And everybody else is saying, oh, no, not you. But you don't think that. And so it's important to be able to communicate it with everybody. Get them online. Get them on the phone. You can add more than one person these days and have a conversation. Hey, this is what's going on. This is what's happening with mom right now. Let's talk about it. What do you guys think we should do? Give everybody a fair chance.
That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what we can do. What we can do, right? And you talk about tempers flaring. That's what we can do. So everybody's involved and included, right? So, okay, can't say, but she didn't ask me. Everybody, what can we do as a family? This is our mom or our cousin or whoever, right? what can we do, right? And there's a lot of support out there, and if somebody in the family can't help, maybe there's some other supports that or resources that we can use. But if everybody's on the line together, then we can discuss that, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's that what can we do? It's your approach because some of our family members are more easily offended than others. And so it is does take prayer. So because we want to make sure people's are in the right headspace when we have these delicate and difficult conversations and we pray about it. We do want the loved one to be a part at some point because it's their life. So we want them to understand we're coming alongside you. What do you want, mom? What do you want, sister? What do you want, brother and dad? Uh, what do you need us to do? And so they can, let them share, but also, sometimes we got to remind people of the documents they already filled out. Does everybody have access to these documents, legal, medical, financial, those that the loved one wants to have them? And I would say let the loved one share as much as they can because it's their life, it's their situation. And I know sometimes people do like to pass the buck on this and say, well, let John do it because you know, he's the youngest and he's the one that's the most uh one I'm closest to, so let him do it. But John may not want that role. And so we do have to ask people, is it okay that we put them down on these paperworks or in form? Because just because they're our parent, our sibling, or our spouse, they may not be the best person for to make these decisions for us or to help us make decisions. So it goes back to get from chaos to connection is communication, communication, communication. It's never too late to have a family meeting, whether you're co-parenting, or in an extended family situation where, you're the person that everybody comes to for support. And it's just something we need to do because a lot of families are disrupted and broken when they could be coming together and doing more together and instead of separate. But it's not just I know people, viewers, you think it's just your family. It's everybody has these concerns at some level, in their families. It's not just not just you. So that's why we know from personal experience, but also from work experience that communication is the key, and setting ground rules in some families. And this is what we will do. This is what we're not doing. This is as far as we can go. It's all about boundaries. Boundaries. So I think boundaries help as well when we're talking with our loved ones about caring for our other one. You know our limits and be okay with that. Do you all have any other suggestions for families as they navigate communicating and um, getting on one accord as much as possible?
As I said, I encourage people to seek out counseling resources, um, Department of Aging, families, teen issues. There are so many different resources available, especially in today's world, either virtually or in person. So I think that coming to find somebody that can help them and offer them some assistance is probably one of the best ways because sometimes we only know what we know. We don't know anything outside of that. And so we don't know about the counseling resources. We don't know that there's a office of aging down the street. We don't know about the various resources to get low cost prescriptions and, all kinds of things. So I think it's always important to do your homework and to have other people get together. Say, you take this part of the assignment, I'll take this part, you do that part, and then let's come back together and talk about where we're going to go from here with whatever the issue is. If it's two parents and the child is having some issues, then again, let's all go do our research and come back to the table. If it's about an aging parent or elderly relative, let's all go out and figure out, what can we do with mom's house? How can we sell it quickly? What about her belongings? What are we going to do with them? People get very, very emotional about what's next, the unknown. So I think just seeking out resources is very, very helpful.
The bottom line is that we have to love one another and love one another to the point that we'll take whatever position that we need to take so that we can share that love with each other. God wants us to be together. He wants us to be unified, right? He wants us to connect. And yeah, we're going to have trials and tribulations. That's what the word says, right? However, God wants us to be as much a part of his body as possible, which means that we have to love one another. We got to push, right? You got to push through, and it's going to be hard. The last thing I'd like to say is remember to take care of yourself in all of this. Take care of yourself because family matters, yes, but you matter also.
Yeah, that's some good advice. Find the resources in your community. Again, the Department of Aging is a great resource. There's so many organizations, especially if our family members have certain medical conditions, all of the different societies, American Heart Association, the Kidney Foundation. There's places that you can go to for information so that when you are helping your loved one through situations, you have some information about it. We know that with co-parenting, they can get a mediator, they can do the family counseling. And if you are the caregiver or the main support system or the person everybody in the family leans on, you most certainly need therapy because you have to process all of the weight of everything in your life with someone so that you can help take care of yourself first, and then you can help other people. But if the family doesn't want to come in, if your spouse doesn't want to come, if your children don't want it, get it for yourself so that you can be strengthened. So when these difficult situations arise within our families, we have the emotional and the spiritual fortitude to face them. And right now, a lot of people are depleted and discouraged, and because of the different situations, whether it's co-parenting. We've talked about finances. A lot of people have lost their jobs, and this is a trickle down effect with the loss of income. So these are some things that even if it's not our family, our personal household, it could be friends and our extended family. And again, we are in this together. We want people to feel like they can do this. They can make some great decisions and choices to move their families from chaos to connection. Now, it may take some tough love in there. Now, I'm going to say that. It's not all going to be, we're going to all meet and have kumbaya experiences. It's going to take some tough love, some boundaries, but it's also in love. When we talk to our loved ones, we can let them know we're doing this in love because we want what's best for you and the family, the child, the parents, the aunts, the uncles, all of our loved ones. So keep that in mind. If your family connections are, like everybody else's, some are on life support, really great. They getting they get 5 stars. And then we have the in betweens. It's okay. It's just about starting the communication, trying to keep it as civil as possible. And when you can't, use therapy for yourself, family, couples, um, get a mediator, and also use your community resources. It's so much out there. I know it's a lot going on, but it's still a lot of resources. We thank you for joining us this evening. Again, you can reach out to the Renaissance Center at 410-409-0025 or check us out on our website, www.therenaissancecenter.org. And this year we celebrate 25 years of serving the community. So we're excited about that. So stay tuned and look out for our announcements for all our upcoming celebratory events. We hope to see you there, and we thank you for joining us this evening on the RC Chat.